Ghost Story, The Master Exorcist. The Bend in Bitch Village. Taking a break in the afternoon at the drink stand under the shade of a rice tree, Master Tien Phap hastily drank a gulp of tea and then fell into contemplation, listening to the folk tunes played by Old Seven. Wanderers and travelers often had some special skill. Old Seven was no exception. No one knew when he had come to this village, only that he had been singing folk tunes and handling his boat for a long time. His fingers on the lute and his hoarse, deep voice always drew attention. The sound of Old Seven's singing held Master Tien Phap still for a long time, his nerves tingling, every hair standing on end. Old Seven paused, looked up at the master and chuckled. "Are you here to find enlightenment, master?" "Yes, indeed," replied Master Tien Phap. "Your music is truly wonderful. You see, master, within this lute lies spirit and essence. Only when I nurture it with care does it give forth such a sound. This instrument has been with me for so long, sometimes it feels like a child, a companion, a dear friend from I know not when." Master Tien Phap nodded thoughtfully, inviting Old Seven to share a cup of tea, and they settled down to converse. Mrs. Boy waved her fan, breaking into their conversation. "Is anyone inviting the master to chant sutras or perform rites?" Master Tien Phap, still lost in thought, replied, "No, madam. If there are ceremonies or rituals at the temple, they would invite the temple's resident monks. We do not handle such matters." Spitting out a mouthful of bright red betel nut juice like fresh blood, Mrs. Boy retorted, "Is that so? I was merely asking, because recently, many have drowned in the bend of the river near Bitch Hamlet. It's only been 3 months since the well, yet 4 souls have already departed. That stretch of the river used to be normal for bathing and washing, but since then, it's been eerily deserted and dark." Suddenly, Mrs. Boy turned to Old Seven and asked softly, "You often row through that bend in the river. Do you know what's behind all this?" Old Seven kept his distant, contemplative gaze for a while before words emerged hoarsely from his throat as if someone was choking him. "You reap what you sow." Mrs. Boy's fan stopped abruptly, and the surrounding guests leaned in closer. One of them spoke up. "What do you mean by that, old man?" "It's just nonsense talk from me. Don't mind it. Everything has its reasons. I suspect there's something puzzling in this matter, so I blurted it out. Please excuse me, everyone. I'm leaving." Gathering his loot case, Old Seven departed under the bewildered gazes of the onlookers. As he disappeared, Mrs. Boy muttered, "Whatever the reason, I hope no more bodies end up at the bottom of that river. It's pitiful and desolate, so lonely." Master Tien Phap had been deep in thought all this while. Old Seven's demeanor and his words didn't seem natural. He was usually reserved and meticulous, not prone to making such casual remarks. After paying Mrs. Boy for the tea, the master urged his 2 young disciples to prepare to return to the temple with him. In a blink, the figures of the 3 monks disappeared behind a cluster of bamboo. The setting sun painted a long streak of reddish hue that extended to the bend at the end of Bitch Village. Looking in that direction now sent shivers down everyone's spine, amplified by the echoing cries of night herons, making it unbearable for anyone to stare for long. The cry at the Miet slope. Old Tri went to set his net at the riverbank just after dusk, his favorite time, as no one would notice him then. Leaving his shack beside the riverbank, Old Tri clumsily placed his net and lit a lamp powered by a small generator to attract fish. After a sip of warm rice wine, he sat mesmerized, gazing out at the shimmering water in the distance. The clump of bamboo on the riverbank split into 2 like the hair tufts of a child, which was rather unusual. Tonight on the full moon, the moonlight shimmered beautifully on the river's surface. Old Tri, intoxicated with tobacco, mumbled a few lines of poetry. The veranda dims under the round moon. The golden breeze whispers like a sorrowful face. These feelings, who can share with me? Old Tri's voice boomed and faded intermittently. He stared blankly at the sky and the river, seeing scenes reminiscent of Li Bai's poems. When he was young, despite dropping out of school due to poverty, he still enjoyed reciting poems by Tang and Song dynasty poets like Li Bai, Du Fu, just for fun. He muttered, "Damn it, in such a picturesque place like this, if any of those Taoist monks started talking nonsense." Since the topic of discussion hadn't yet taken place, this bend in the river was quite busy at night. Besides Old Tri's net fishing, a few children went frog hunting with small flashlights, often visiting his hut, sitting to listen to his stories about the West and China. Nowadays, bringing the boat ashore, Old Tri approached the slope of Miet. This shrine had long been abandoned, its eerie red lantern casting a spooky glow that made people want to flee. Since dusk, no one dared venture near this place. Old Tri edged closer to the slope of Miet, where now he only heard a woman crying, interspersed with the laughter of a child. The child's laughter sounded eerie to Old Tri. Old Tri looked towards the shrine, but saw no one. Following the laughter, he walked towards a nearby wall by a jackfruit tree. There he saw someone sitting. Next to them, a young child, barely 2 years old, naked and completely bald. In the dead of night like this, bringing a child out to play and then crying like this must be lost, poor thing, muttered Old Tri under his breath. "Hey, miss, where do you live? Are you lost? It's so cold. Why isn't the child wearing any clothes?" Old Tri asked as he approached. The child stopped laughing abruptly, turned to look at Old Tri, and as he ran towards him, he shouted loudly, "Clothes! Clothes for me!" At that moment, the woman raised her head, her half-hidden hair revealing a face with bright, sharp eyes, and said to the child, "All right then, ask this man to come with us, my dear." Ha ha! Ha ha! The woman's laughter sent chills down Old Tri's spine, causing him to lose his composure. His bravado and the bravely threatening curses he had made disappeared, and Old Tri managed only to scream before running for his life towards Mr. Toan's house. Mr. Toan, half asleep, heard someone shouting and banging on his door, mistaking it for a thief. He quickly grabbed a stick and opened the door, ready to strike the dark figure banging outside. Old Tri managed to cry out, "Oh!" loudly before fainting. Mr. Toan regained his senses after a moment and lit a lamp to see who this bold intruder was. Turns out it was Old Tri. After Old Tri came to, Mr. Toan gently hit him on the head with an orange. Not too hard, but enough to get his attention. After hearing Old Tri's story, both Mr. Toan and his elder son decided to light a lantern and head up to Miet slope. Old Tri trembled as he walked, tightly gripping Mr. Trong's hand, still haunted by the terrifying faces he had seen. In the deserted shrine, under the jackfruit tree, there remained only a few pieces of old military uniforms and some worn-out coins, but the mother and child were nowhere to be found. Nonetheless, this was enough to unsettle all three men. After waiting for a while, with no further activity, everyone headed back home. Old Tri paddled vigorously away from the shrine, aiming to keep as far from it as possible. He tried lifting his fishing net, but found it unusually heavy. Whatever fear he had previously felt seemed to vanish as he suspected he had caught a large fish. After a struggle, he managed to lift the net and shone a light on it. His face again turned pale, just like when he encountered the mother and child on the slope of Miet. In the net was a human figure, emitting a putrid smell that made Old Tri vomit on the spot. Ghost caught. News spread quickly that Old Tri had encountered a ghost in the dead of night and caught a human in his net, turning the tranquil village of Bitch upside down. How could there not be commotion when such major events unfolded? The police came to investigate and concluded that Chief Thung, the village headman, had drowned in a drunken accident in the river. However, no one in the village believed it. 11 out of 10 people thought Chief Thung had been killed by a ghost, spreading fear throughout the village. The death of Chief Thung meant the appearance of the 5th corpse within 4 months. The stretch of river had become desolate, devoid of human presence, and the neon light in Old Tri's hut had been turned off. Rumor had it that Old Tri had left for another village. The children in the neighborhood sang eerie songs day and night. Listen, listen to the ghostly water. One man died first, then pulled in a few more. Some fought, some drank, everyone's face twisted with fear. Surely the ghosts are following. Mother, please give us clothes. Baboy's watering hole became bustling with customers these days, everyone coming to hear the truth behind the stories. Baboy poured drinks with an air of mystery. It's terrifying, folks. It's taken 5 lives now. When Old Tree cast his net, it even threatened to ruin our village and he had to leave. The crowd grew more agitated, fear evident on every face. Suddenly, amidst the murmuring crowd, a voice spoke out. These 2 rings are also easy to catch. All eyes turned towards the speaker, Old An, the ritual master. Baboy chimed in quickly. Hey, don't just talk. If you're so good, go catch those 2 rings and bring them here. The whole village will pitch in for your reward. Stroking his unkempt beard, Old An chuckled. The whole village can pool their money together. Tonight, I'll go to Myodoi's slope and catch those 2 rings for fun. With that, he stood up and walked away straight. The crowd murmured even more, everyone speculating and gossiping. Only one person separated from the crowd and calmly walked towards the boat, paddling towards the bend in the beach village river. It was Old Bai. From the middle of the river, each line of his song carried a sense of lament and heaviness. Look, the clouds have gone away. Birds return to the sad mountains. The boat rocks gently. Where is my beloved? As dusk fell, everyone in every house closed their doors. The sound of doors shutting echoing softly. Yet everyone kept their eyes on Myodoi's slope to see how Old Ein would catch the ghosts. The bold children ran after Old An, singing their eerie songs. Tonight, Old An wore a golden outfit resembling Lam Chang-an from the vampire movies, except one side was for the movies and the other for catching real ghosts. Old An began arranging his ceremonial items in the middle of the shrine, several golden candles flickering and mixing with the dim red glow of lanterns, casting a mysterious atmosphere. He placed a basin in the center filled with a viscous liquid that emitted a pungent odor, likely dogfish ink. With deft strokes, he drew dragon and snake figures on several talismans, then began his rituals. One hand rang a bell while the other held a wooden sword, chanting incomprehensible words intermittently, tossing handfuls of rice towards the base of the jackfruit tree, shouting loudly, "Spirits, depart from this tree. Leave these rings. Set yourselves free." Observing Old An's demeanor, the children giggled discreetly, while the villagers strained their ears and squinted towards Myodoi's slope, though they could only see the dense night and faint light from candles and lanterns. The blood-filled basin flew towards the base of the jackfruit tree, propelled by Old An's strong sneeze. Suddenly, murky smoke billowed from the tree's roots with a horrifying growl that made everyone cover their ears. A white figure perched amidst the trunk, its fierce red eyes glaring at Old An with a twisted, wrathful gaze. Old An staggered back, hurling rice and shouting ancient incantations, but to no avail. The ghost remained, swaying, its tongue smeared with the blood of the black dog, dragging down to the ground. Desperately, Old An sprayed the flammable oil towards the spirit, causing a loud boom. His screams echoed through the air. He dashed a few steps before collapsing, a blazing torch extinguished, causing the children to pale and scatter, shattering the market crowd. By the time they reached him, Old An was nothing but a charred lump, emitting smoke. The jackfruit tree was deserted. At the ferry landing, Elder Bay sat motionless, watching the dispersing crowd slope towards the temple hill. He knew how it had all transpired. Strumming his erhu, he sat and sang, his songs full of poignant tales of human fate. The key. Master Tien Phap sat sipping tea, pondering the events unfolding in the village. Now that night had fallen, no one dared to venture out. The children were kept indoors. The Bitch River lay desolate, eerie, and cold. The temple gates seemed the only place where people felt secure. A timid sparrow flitted in, pouring hot water into the kettle, interrupting the master's thoughts. "Leave it to me, master," the sparrow said. "Master, earlier Elder Bay was waiting to see you at the temple entrance. I intended to inform you, but you seemed deep in thought. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Quickly, go and invite him in," Master Tien Phap hurriedly replied. Elder Bay slowly walked into the corner of the temple garden, cradling his erhu. Pouring a cup of tea for him, Master Tien Phap couldn't hide his skepticism. Elder Bay said nothing, finishing his tea in one gulp. Master Tien Phap refilled his cup, and Elder Bay drank again, slowly this time. Setting down the still warm teacup, Elder Bay spoke softly. "Surely, Master, you've heard about the ghostly affair in our village." "Yes, Elder, I have. Honestly, I've been troubled by it as well. You know, the temple's open-hearted compassion aims to absolve all wrongs. Any grievance or restless spirit is usually a result of accumulated resentment. I believe this wandering spirit must have unfinished business, unable to find resolution through our temple's efforts." "Do you also believe in ghosts, Master?" Elder Bay asked firmly. "Yes, indeed. Humans possess both body and soul. When one dies, only the soul remains. Typically, the soul reincarnates, but if there are unresolved issues, the soul may linger." Exhaling heavily, Elder Bay looked into the distance and began his tale. "This matter is partly my fault. 4 months ago, on the eve of Tet, I was fishing by the riverbank when I saw a young woman approach, asking for passage across the river. It was nearly dusk, and she looked unwell, so I hesitated to row her across immediately. After some coaxing, she finally cried, and amidst tears, she confessed she was pregnant with a child from a man named So. He had taken all her savings and fled, leaving her with a burden of shame. Distraught, she wandered to our village and sought my help. At that time, I was dismissive, thinking she hadn't eaten, and reassured her with a few words before going to Mrs. Boy's stall to find something for her to eat. Little did I know, upon returning, I found my boat in the middle of the river. Suspecting foul play, I borrowed Lao Tri's boat and searched, only to find nothing but a note from her, detailing So's betrayal and asking me to keep something for her. Master, unbeknownst to you, I searched all night and found her body the next morning. Wanting to avoid village gossip on New Year's Day, I buried her temporarily under the jackfruit tree and offered incense at the temple slope. Little did I expect her spirit to haunt us so." Master Tien Phap pondered deeply. Now he understood everything. He hadn't imagined such a tragic tale could unfold in this small village. Suddenly remembering something, Master Tien Phap eagerly asked Elder Bay, "Do you still have the item she asked you to keep?" Elder Bay slowly pulled out an object from his robes, and Master Tien Phap instantly recognized it with a shock. "Is this the young woman in the pink ao dai with short hair, about 25 years old? Isn't it, Elder?" How could Master Tien Phap forget that sorrowful smile, the gaze filled with pain and bitterness from the young woman? Looking down at the sparkling silver necklace, Master Tianfap sighed deeply. The item had indeed survived through the ages. "Tonight, Elder, you will come with me there," Master said firmly, his face showing no hesitation. By the time they reached the temple slope, it was well past 8, eerily quiet and chillingly deserted. Even the nearby houses seemed to have evaded the place, making it a difficult journey for both Master Tianfap and Elder Bai to navigate through the darkness dominated by the croaking of frogs. Plunging a bundle of red incense sticks into the jackfruit tree's roots, Master Tianfap solemnly recited passages from the Earth Store Sutra and offered prayers for the deceased, his expression grave. Elder Bai stood beside him, swirling a vivid red tobacco pipe, quietly listening to the sacred verses. After a while, Master Tianfap paused, speaking loudly and clearly so that Elder Bai could witness. "Dear departed soul, I and the assembly had the karmic fortune to meet, but alas, we did not have the karmic awakening. This is a great fault of mine. As a monk, I must open the doors of compassion, listen to the grievances of all sentient beings. Yet, I neglected to realize that you carried such a heavy burden. Now that this matter has come to light, it is clear that you have not yet attained liberation. As one sows, so shall they reap. That man who betrayed you will face his comeuppance. Do not harbor vengeance that harms innocent lives. Even the life in your womb deserves a chance at reincarnation. Today, with Elder Bai's help, I humbly propose to bury your remains within the temple, hoping for your swift liberation. You should not linger here as a vengeful spirit. If you agree, please allow these incense sticks to burn brightly 3 times, so that we may understand." After a long silence, with no sign of movement, Elder Bai was about to speak when Master Tianfap gently restrained him. "Dear departed soul, the words of this humble monk may not yet fully resonate with you." An eerie silence fell upon them. Elder Bai felt his blood coursing through his veins, and both he and Master Tianfap held their breath. Suddenly, a heart-wrenching scream tore through the air from the jackfruit tree above, prompting the incense sticks to instantly flare up 3 times before extinguishing. Master Tianfap closed his eyes, reciting scriptures, his voice reaching Elder Bai. "Elder, it is done." Thanks to Master Tianfap's explanation and Elder Bai's account, the villagers finally understood and mourned for the young woman in the pink ao dai. People began to frequent the riverside again, no longer fearing for their lives on that stretch of the river. Adults and children emerged joyfully, though Mrs. Boy felt a slight sadness at the decline in gossip-seeking customers. Nonetheless, the impact of the story and the spirit's resolution gradually transformed the desolate temple slope into a less eerie and lonely place, though the chills still lingered. End of the story.